starting now. All right, we're live.
Great, thanks, Joe. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Andrew Schlack. I'm the program manager for the Capital Magnet Fund, and I'd like to welcome everyone to today's question and answer session for applicants intending to apply for the fiscal year 2023 Capital Magnet Fund program using our new consortium approach, which again is new this year for fiscal year 2023. And we wanted to create a little extra space in the calendar today to make sure that we answer questions for groups that are interested in applying under this approach. And so got our great colleagues here from the Capital Magnet Fund program team, Phyllis Brown, who's going to be our pilot today, taking us through some slides, Elizabeth Hoffman, who's the associate program manager, Sarah Ferraro, who's joining us, Paula Sampson, senior program and policy advisor, and Joe Joy, who's got the Capital Magnet Fund and going to be coordinating some of the logistics. So with that, Phyllis, if we want to go to the next slide, very short presentation. We just wanted to make sure that folks had access to a couple of pieces of information as Phyllis pulls up the very first slide, which is a reminder of the application timeline. Again, here we are February 13th. In 10 days, a requirement is that everyone has submitted their SF424 electronically in grants.gov. The deadline on that, of course, is 11:59 Eastern time. And please, please, please submit that early, even if you're not sure if you want to apply using a consortium approach, or if you're just interested in applying for the program. If you miss that deadline, it is an eligibility requirement and you will be precluded from submitting an application. So even if you're on the fence about whether or not you're going to apply as a consortium, please still get in your SF424 form. The second piece of information that's due on February 23rd is the creation of your AMIS account, including registration of your UEI and EIN number. And this is the way that the CDFI fund matches your grants.gov SF424 with the application that you will launch. Again, that's the same deadline. So in about 10 days at 11:59. And then the penultimate deadline for this year's 2023 Capital Magnet Fund funding round is on March 21st. And that's, again, 11:59 Eastern deadline. That's when all of the application materials and attachments are required to be submitted electronically in AMIS. And again, that's another hard deadline. So with that, we're here in the open application period. Again, we wanted to create space here before the SF424 deadline. I know the group has, the team has been responding to a lot of great service request questions. We've published our frequently asked questions, which are soon to be updated. So keep an eye out for that as we roll out new materials later this week. And at this point, we're still on schedule for an announcement by the end of calendar year 2023. So with that, we'll go to the next slide, Phyllis. And so one important thing to keep in mind for our consortium members who are interested in applying to the CMF program under a consortium approach is that we please also ask you to submit a service request by the February 23rd deadline to identify not only your organization, but the other peer organizations that are going to be submitting as a consortium under the same consortium. And this will just help us manage the workflow. Again, we're just asking this as a courtesy to please submit the name of your organization as well as your cohort of consortium members. And again, the consortium approach is new this year. Based on our statute, we need to collect applications, their individual applications from individual applicants, and if awarded, they will be individual awards to individual organizations. And the consortium approach is really designed to help foster collaboration amongst organizations that are applying for the Capital Magnet Fund program. We'll go into a few of the details, but basically it allows the combined track record and the combined pipeline to be considered as part of for applications, plural, right? One from each group, and you will be held accountable for the assistance agreement for your organization. Again, working together with your peer members in your consortium cohort. So with that, Phyllis, the next slide will take us through a series of webinars that we've already hosted. We're midway, a little bit farther than midway down the page there. Today, February 13th, we're at our question and answer for consortium approach members. We've had 3 previous webinars, which are all recorded, and in a moment, Phyllis is going to demo how to get to our website where all this content is posted. But we have one more application question and answer session coming up on March 7th. So please mark your calendars. This will be an open call for any additional questions that folks want to ask audibly. We'll hold that on March 7th, 2 p.m. And there is a pre-recorded AMIS application demo that Sarah did, which is posted online. It's terrific if you're running into any AMIS questions, or this might be the first time you're using the AMIS system. You'll want to refer to that really helpful AMIS application demo. So with this, as indicated on the little footnote here, all of these materials are available under step 2, how to apply. So Phyllis, I think the next slide will just sort of take us through some additional resources that are all posted. Again, we've published the NOFA. Phyllis is going to take us to the page where all this material is provided. If you're new to the program and you want to familiarize yourself with where the rules, what the rules say about the Capital Magnet Fund program are, we operate under the interim rule that was amended on February 8th of 2016. And that is our interim rule that is the precedent for the program, the application, and the requirements, and also the assistance agreement. So that's a very helpful document for folks that are new to the program. We've got our application instructions. We've got a set of frequently asked questions. Again, there's an update that's forthcoming. I'd say by the end of the week, you'll want to check back, say, by this time on Friday, we will highlight a few additional frequently asked questions. There's a glossary that's provided, as well as our data set. And Phyllis is going to show us how to get to those resources here in a second. The very next slide, Phyllis will sort of lay out a couple of ground rules. As Phyllis moves to the next slide.
Yeah, trying to get it there. Let's see. No one is not moving. Let's see. Not sure why it's not moving.
Could just be hung up, but I'll lay a couple of ground rules. So for folks that are joining today, there are a couple of things that we're not going to cover off the top of my head. We're not going to talk about past funding round decisions. So any reason that your organization may have not received an award in the past. We won't talk about certification. So there's CDFI certification process. We will not talk about details of your compliance. So if you've got an existing award and you're having any concerns about compliance with that existing award, and if there are details about your specific application or strategy, if it's not to the benefit of the entire group here, we would table those responses, and we would encourage you to follow up with your questions via a service request. So Phyllis, your microphone is still on. I think at this point, we just wanted to navigate over to the website. If you want to share your screen again and just show people where all of this content is, I'll pass the mic over to you, Phyllis.
Okay, thank you. Let me get that screen shared again. Okay, can you see the slide where we're on our website right now?
Yep, you're going to take us over to the CMF page. Yep.
Yes, so we're on our CDI Fund website. So on this logo, you're just going to go on and click on this logo right here, and then go to Programs and Training. Programs, you'll choose Capital Magnet Fund Program. From this page, you just scroll down to step 2, apply here, that was referenced in the slides earlier. Once you click on that, you're at the screen, the application process. Scroll down a little further, And you see some of our presentations, modules, application round timeline, the pre-referenced webinars, as well as the application materials. And I think you wanted me to share the frequently asked questions, Andrew, is that correct?
Yeah, if you want to just pull them up, folks might have questions about that. I think that's the resource that we'll probably use the most today. Thanks, Phyllis.
Sure.
Great. So again, today is really dedicated to making the Capital Magnet Fund staff available to answer questions. So like I shared the very brief presentation here, we just wanted to acknowledge that a lot of the resources that we've shared, this is what we'll want to cover today. So Joy is going to set a few ground rules for how to ask questions, and Jo will be unmuting herself and coming back in here momentarily as we tee up for the first set of questions. Thanks, Jo, and thanks, Phyllis.
All right, thank you, Andrew. So at this time, if you have a question, we'll be asking all of them verbally. To ask a question, please hit the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen towards the right. That will place you in line virtually to ask your question, and I will be calling on you in turn, inviting you to unmute and state your question. Feel free to turn your camera on if you want to, but don't feel like you have to. And when I call on you, please introduce yourself and your organization, if you don't mind, and ask your question. And just a reminder, we are only answering consortium approach related questions today for the fiscal year 2023 application. If you aren't able to ask a question today or think of something later, please submit a service request. We will get back to you as soon as possible. So now I'm going to turn the floor over to you all. So please get those hands up if you have questions, and I will call on you. Anyone who wants to be our brave first question asker? Wanda, that is you. You're welcome to unmute and ask your question.
I will bravely go first. Thank you, Joy. I wanted to ask, the one thing that is troubling me about this consortium application is that the guidance continues to say that each applicant should put forth its own pipeline of projects. Yet it also says that each of the consortium members must all agree to invest in the same projects. So if they must invest in the same projects, how could they possibly have different pipelines?
Let me take a stab at that, Wanda. You know, it's really a function of trying to allow each applicant to have an application that could stand on its own if for some reason the others fall out. So you want to make sure your pipeline is in there. What we will do during the review process is you will have told us, I'm working with organization B over here. The two of us are going to be a consortium. We're going to take your two applications and we're going to combine them. It doesn't mean that you do it secretly from your other consortium members. You know, hopefully you are talking to each other and you know the projects. They may have a project that you're not that interested in, but yet you do need to invest in that project. We're not saying how much you need to invest. That will be your decision ultimately. But we are saying that because you're getting the benefit of your fellow consortium members, you're getting the benefit of their track record, other things that they are bringing to the table. And we're looking at that and scoring you collectively on many, many things. That's the reason why, you want to make sure that you are talking to each other, and also the reason why we need to have you invest in one another's projects. Did that help?
Yes, ma'am, it does. And if I could just take the liberty of having a follow-up question, unrelated, but while I have the floor. Okay, so when you say that the applications, will be evaluated, just say it starts out in a consortium of 5, and 2 of the members you've deemed don't meet the threshold to have a high performance application and they're kicked out. So now you're left with the 3, which you would move forward in evaluating them collectively.
Mm-hmm.
My concern is that people will create a application in a consortium that is kind of an ecosystem, and then kicking the other 2 out might collapse the whole thing. Like, for example, if you have, a CDFI that's, interested in making financial investments, right? And they're partnered with a multifamily developer, a nonprofit multifamily developer, right? And you kick out the developer, then the financer doesn't have access to those projects and opportunities. I don't know. I just have a lot of angst about going forward, right? Because maybe it's just better if they just go at it alone, as opposed to trying to be part of a consortium. We're a little bit apprehensive about jumping into the pool and taking the approach. I like the innovation and I want to do it, but at the same time, there's definitely some things that cause us angst. I mean, I've been working with the Treasury since 2004, so I just have a little angst, Paula.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's new. It is new, and that's understandable. I think for let's say you have 5 members, in your example, I think you said 2 fall out. I mean, you should really, hopefully everyone's looking at, am I qualified? Do I have 3 years of experience? Am I a nonprofit, or am I a certified CDFI? I mean, those are the kind of eligibility questions. They're really basic. And so to get kicked out would, it'd be unusual. Or someone hasn't really looked at the materials and kind of all of our basic standards that apply to all applications. So, we encourage you to look at that first. And then assuming all 5 do, yeah, you might have one that doesn't score as well, but remember, we're building that in because a lot of things are scored collectively. Or let's just say one falls out. If the whole thing falls apart, well, maybe it wasn't that strong to begin with. But you will be, even if, let's say you had 5, 2 didn't qualify, and then 2 more for some reason, they fell out, you would be left, and we would evaluate you individually. So you would still be evaluated individually. And in the end, if you got an award, you always have the right to say, no, I'm not going to accept this because this is not what I had intended. I think it's going to be very, very rare that whole sequence of events happens. So maybe, I understand a little bit of angst, but maybe not as much as you might think.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I'll let it go. Thank you, Paula. I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Rhonda. So, reminder, another ground rule that we may have glossed over. Please raise your hand to ask a question. We are not accepting questions submitted via chat to read on your behalf and answer out loud, unless you raise your hand and are somehow having audio issues. So I've gotten a couple questions in the chat, so maybe I didn't make that clear at the beginning, but please raise your hand if you have a question. Thank you.
And the reason we do this is because this is being recorded for later reference, and we can't record the questions that come in through the chat. So Joe was very helpful in responding to one of the questions. I'll just read it out loud for the benefit. Are all the deadlines on the website? And Joe affirmatively responded that yes, if you use the link that Phyllis demoed, where to find the resources underneath the step 2, how to apply. Joe, I don't know if you responded to any other questions. That's the only one I'm seeing publicly. But again, the reason we need you to ask your questions orally is that this is being recorded and we just can't capture the dialogue that goes back and forth in the chat.
Yeah, and we want everyone to hear the benefit of both your question and your answer. And we are doing a lot of multitasking. So please don't be shy, raise those hands, ask your questions. We want to encourage you to ask your questions, but if you are shy, please submit a service request.
Hi, sorry, I was late, so I missed the chat thing. But I wanted to just make, just for clarity. So if we went and applied as a consortium, we could not turn in one application and then in the application narrative talk about, because all 5 of us are eligible. We've been in business for over 20 years, each of us, all these things. And we could provide in the narrative kind of, who we are, but then the budget and the leverage and all that would be sort of a sum total of all 5 of us. That would be an advantage to go as a consortium. Otherwise, there's really no advantage to apply as a consortium to me, unless I'm wrong.
Yeah, so Amy, thanks for the question. We covered that at the top, and our statute precludes us from organizing consortium. And maybe what people are familiar with, with HUD, like a consortium has a very specific term around like neighborhood stabilization project, like the NSP program would mean exactly what you're talking about. A group gets together and they submit a single application, and then there's a single reporting requirement. Our statute is written in a manner where we need to collect a single organization is eligible to apply, and a single award needs to be made to that organization as an applicant recipient. And so what we're calling here is a consortium approach, and I use the air quotes like very fondly. It is an approach, right? It is a consortium approach that's intended to get us as close as we can get to the type of consortium that you're talking about, but it 100% requires an individual application. It requires 100% eligibility for each recipient applicant, and 100% will require the same of assistance agreement and reporting as individual organizations. So those are the rules, and we're playing by them, but we do acknowledge and appreciate your question. And I think, the competitive advantage really goes back to what we covered earlier on, is that you're really leveraging the collective track record and the collective pipeline of the organizations that are, stronger together, because you can prove that you've got more project experience and that your pipeline is bigger, so that if you do have an award, there's more confidence that you're going to be able to deploy it in the manner and nature for which you've submitted your application. So just a little pivot on whether or not there's actually an advantage to being part of a consortium. The case is that, yes, it is more of an advantage if you're an organization that lacks, a track record or pipeline. So appreciate the question. I hope that helps clarify, and happy to answer anything else that you might have, Amy.
No, so one organization could apply for all 5 of us as the alliance, but no. Okay.
No.
Okay. So we would still have to turn in a application individually, and okay. So that's just,
Yeah.
I guess it's labor intensive on the front end, but yeah, I can see how on the back end, if everybody gets through, would be helpful. So thank you.
Yeah. And I just want to be really clear, not only 5 applications, but 5 SF424s, 5 eligibility, it starts with the SF424. Each organization applying as part of consortium approach has to submit their own SF424. It's really a mechanism by which we analyze a collection of applications is probably the clearest way to explain the way that the consortium approach is going to work.
Andrew, if I could just add to that, I do want to emphasize again, as Andrew said, assistance agreement, but also CMF performance reports. Each applicant will have their own responsibility in accordance with that. So just keep in mind, it's similar in the way that you would apply for any other application. It's just that you are benefiting from this collective scoring, which we outline in the NOFA.
Just to piggyback off that question though, Andrew, I'm asking as a recipient hat on my head. It might make sense though with separate applications to have very similar answers to some of the application questions across the consortium. Is that a possibility? Even though they are actually separate applications, there could be kind of, you know, working together on answers for certain things that everyone is submitting. Is that a possibility?
I can answer that if you want, Andrew. Perfect. Okay, so that's a great plug for this wonderful guidance we have on our website, which is called the Supplemental Guidance for Consortium Approach Applicants. Similar to the application instruction, it goes question by question, in which we're asking either each applicant to provide their own individual information, or when they might want to work with their other consortium members to craft a narrative that kind of reflects the holistic model of the consortia. So definitely encourage folks to take a look at that guidance very closely as they fill out their application, because it's going to guide you exactly what needs to be individual, where should you be talking to your other members. And again, at the front, it talks about, you know, what are you scored individually, what's prorated, and then what is collective as well. So it gives you a really good sense of where we're going to be looking. So that's a great question, Joe.
Thanks for that answer, Sarah. All right, anyone else want to raise your hand? And if you joined late, I admitted a few people a few minutes ago. We are asking that all questions be asked by using the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen, and then I will call on you to unmute and ask your questions. Please do not submit questions in the chat unless you are having audio issues. We'll make an exception, but there are no hands up right now. Does anyone want to ask a question? All right, Andrew, we don't have any hands up right now, just so you know.
Okay, well, thanks, Joe. DeWanda will have another question, so.
Yay,
I'm sorry.
Wanda, welcome back. No, please
No
don't
one's
apologize.
gonna ask the question. I guess if I could just beg one more question, it would be, does anybody know like the driving force that's behind this? Like I get how some initiatives have been driven towards, you know, Native American initiatives, or how some have been, you know, MDIs. And I'm just trying to understand what are we trying to get at here? What's the goal, right? I know it's not just getting around not being able to do applications with multiple people. So I know that's not the answer, right? So do you know what's the goal? Because I feel like there's a reason and I just don't know what it is. And it would be helpful.
That's a great question. I'm going to ask Paula to speak to this. You know, we're a responsive program. We're a learning organization. As we shared, this is our 7th funding round. And I think there was just a recognition of an opportunity here. This is our 8th, yes. So we've completed 7 rounds and we've learned a lot along the way. And Paula, maybe you want to opine on DeWanda's question.
Yeah, I think there are kind of 2 answers to this, DeWanda. One is that we do know recipients are doing this. They are working together. And so we do have, we're just maybe streamlining that a little bit, or maybe formalizing it a little bit more. We have some rules around that already, but so this was one way to, I'll say formalize those who really want to work together. And so, we would all be in it. We'd all know about it up front. I think, especially on a compliance point of view, you know about it in advance. So I think that's one of the reasons. The other reason is that, we're a program, and that is one of our statutory requirements and goals is to, be geographically diverse, serving a whole variety of communities. And sometimes, maybe the smaller areas there were smaller organizations can't be as competitive. They don't have the track record. They just don't have the resources. But if they combined with somebody bigger, or if you had the benefit of several of them combining and saying together, hey, we're a force here, that might make them more competitive. So I think that those were probably the two drivers in trying to come up with some way, despite our statute, that we can make this possible.
So then let me ask you this. Do you think it's better to have maybe, several either developers or financiers who collectively maybe, they're small, right? Individually, they may be small, right? And probably maybe on their own, I'm just gonna, for easy math, say they only could do 100, right? But together they could do 300 or 350 units over the award period. That's more attractive, yes, than somebody who could just do 100. Is that more attractive as a consortium, or is it more attractive that the consortium create a ecosystem in which more opportunity could exist, right? Like if you have a housing counseling agency that controls down payment assistance, and then you have a financier that either finances construction or maybe they finance mortgages, and then you have an affordable housing developer, and then together they kind of create an ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, I like your description of an ecosystem, and I think that's certainly one reason why a group would get together. But I think another might be an area might not be served because a smaller group, we'll fund small groups, and we will, some people only go for the minimum 500,000, and they don't have that many units. So it's not that we wouldn't fund that, but do they have the experience, the track record? Do they have the experienced personnel? Maybe alone they don't, and so they don't score as well as that, but together they do. That's the other reason behind it.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I'm not going to ask any more questions.
Oh, please, feel free. You have good questions.
Yes, there's no limit on the number of questions you ask if you have more than one, especially given that we have a pretty quiet group on today. Wanda, I'm going to lower your hand, but feel free to raise it again if you do have another one. Anyone else have a question? Or anyone from our team have any insights that they just want to offer up unprovoked?
Patrice has a question.
Patrice, you are welcome to unmute and ask your question.
Hi, excuse me. I have more of a housekeeping question. We submitted a service request following a Zoom that we had with Andrew about a concept for our consortium, and the answer to that will determine our next steps. Either whether we proceed as a consortium or not, or whether we need to kind of revisit our concept. So do we have any kind of ETA on how long it'll take? And Andrew, I think you told us it was going to require a legal review. And I know this is a very specific question for us, but since no one else was asking, I thought I would jump in. We submitted it Friday, I believe. Thursday or Friday, I can't remember. So just trying to, pace ourselves in terms of timing on, working on this. When can we expect a response?
Great, thanks for the question, Patrice. So I said at the top of the call, we are issuing an updated version of our frequently asked questions. The response to your particular concern is going to be addressed in that frequently asked questions. So we don't have any update for you. As I shared at the top of the call, it's likely to be published by the end of the week. My recommendation to you is that either way, if you're going to apply as an individual group or as a consortium under a consortium approach, you still need to submit your SF424, so you can do that right away. Very low barrier of entry on the SF424. But the response to your specific question, I can't give you a promise, but it's currently working its way through, and I would anticipate it being published by the end of the week, if not earlier. And we're going to leave your service request open just to make sure that we respond to it once the frequently asked question is published.
Okay. Thank you. We did submit our 424 already, but should we go ahead and also submit the service request regarding a consortium approach, even if we ultimately do not apply as a consortium, or should we wait until the answer to our question?
You're welcome to do that either way. If you wanted to submit the service request, acknowledging that you are intending to apply, that'd be great. If not, you can wait until the response to the question comes out.
Okay. We're just trying to figure out our pace of work here. Thank you.
Understood. Yep. Great. Thanks, Patrice. Thanks for your patience as we work to get that response out. So again, as Joe mentioned, we're happy to stay on the call as long as folks want, as long as those questions keep coming in, but we certainly don't need to exhaust our full 90-minute allocation. So I'm just going to do a last call for any questions. We didn't know how much interest there would be on this particular question and answer, so we did want to set aside enough time, but if we're out of questions, I think we can wrap it up for the day. So maybe just one last call here. I'll pause. And DeWanda.
Hey, this is the last question, and I'm just being ridiculous. And I just wanted to throw out there to people, did they have any idea what, the cost is to hire a consultant to write this application? Or anybody have any idea how many hours on average these applications take?
So we're not going to share information like that, DeWanda, on this call. It wouldn't be appropriate, but if there's nothing precluding, I understand, DeWanda, you didn't introduce yourself or what organization you're representing. I recognize your name because I know that you may have been a reviewer for other CDFI fund programs, which I've been involved with. So I recognized your name, but we won't be talking about, specific response to your question, DeWanda. Thanks for your understanding.
No problem. Thank you. You've been very generous answering my questions today. I appreciate every one of you. Thank you so much.
Very good. Okay. All right. So Nicole is just, okay. Well, I think this is a good place to pause, right? No additional questions. Thanks again, everyone, for your interest in the Capital Magnet Fund program. Again, this is a new option for 2023. The team here has recognized we're standing by to answer any and all questions via an EMIS service request. So please keep those coming in. Again, a reminder about the February 23rd deadline. If you miss that deadline, there's nothing we can do. So please take that into consideration as you make your plans for this week. But again, thanks to the whole team for preparing for today's question and answer. It's always a thrill to meet and speak with people. So thanks again, everybody. I think we can stand adjourned. Have a good afternoon.
February 23rd is for SF424, not the application, if anyone joined late and had a freak out moment there. Just to set that straight, but all the deadlines are on our website and in the notepad. Thank you.